Awesome. Thank you so much. Jennifer, would you mind taking roll call for us to kick off?
Sure. Chair Andrew Baz,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Drix. Vice Drix is absent.
He's absent, yeah.
Okay. Ms. Van Amber,
Present.
Mr. Garcia,
Here.
Mr. Halquin. Mr. Halquin is absent.
Jesus is absent.
Okay. Miss Amelia Rose
Here.
and Vadit Kumba.
Here.
You have 5 present and 2 absent. You have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I also want to acknowledge 2 additional people who are with us today. We have Councilperson Goncalves. Did I mess that up? Oh, we have Priscilla de la Cruz, who is so soon to be an ESTF member any day now, but she has been voted in and will be official soon, but she is here as well. And also Emily Koo and Leah from the Office of Sustainability are both here as well. Thank you all for joining. So I am going to kick us off and set the stage. Councilperson has a presentation, which we're going to get to in just a moment. We're just going to have 2 agenda item or 1.5 agenda items first. So the half is just, we're in November. I wanted to take a moment just to remind everyone what kind of our big priorities were for the year. As I was looking back, and I sent you guys all the letter that we sent to the mayor and City Council President Matos and City Council members in February. We sent that at the very end of February, right before everything shut down. So it might be lost in the back of your mind somewhere. So had sent it to the task force members ahead of time. But just as a reminder, I was gonna, if it's okay with the clerks, share my screen to show you guys what the letter was and remind us of what our priorities had been over the course of 2020 as we start thinking about new exciting initiatives and also stepping into 2021, which is on its way. Oops. Sean, am I able to share my screen?
I can let you do that if you promise to send me what you're sharing, because it becomes a public document. So I hope that you have it separate from other things on your desktop so that you could email it to us afterwards so we can make it part of the public record.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
I will make you a co-host here.
Nice. Okay, now we're cooking with gas, or now we're cooking with electric. Cool. So I have this in an actual PDF too, Sean. So I'll send you the PDF. I put it in the Word doc so it'd be easier to send around to everybody. But just as a reminder, we first really highlighted a lot of the accomplishments that the city had taken over the course of 2019, which were things like Leah being able to hire several new superb staff, which includes Emily Koo, who's on the call with us today. The release of the Racial and Environmental Justice, the release in partnership with the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee of the Climate Justice Plan, just a little more than a year ago. The early implementation of the plan, including the launch of the Green Justice Zones, implementation of the beginning of the implementation of community choice, which we now have seen as moving through the process from prior calls, and then the support of the resolution supporting the climate justice strategy or plan. And then the 2 things that we really highlighted, one was asking for continued support for the implementation of the climate justice plan. And this included 4 things. One was the benchmarking ordinance, which we had hoped would have been introduced in March, but we all probably remember what was going on in the world in March and continues to go on in the world. An updated ordinance which would outline the roles of the Office of Sustainability, which was also hoped to be introduced in March, but hopefully is still on the way. Implementation of the municipal aggregation program, which we've seen presentations of and seen in the process, called community choice aggregation. And then continue to support just in general for the green justice zones. And then our second big priority was really just seeing the climate justice, sustainability and climate justice kind of across the board in all policies with the city. So as we see things come up with other task forces and commissions and city departments, ensuring that they're continuing to incorporate racial justice and environmental justice in their decision-making processes. And those were our main priorities. just kind of wanted to ground us in that, especially as we come to the close of this year and hear about exciting new things. And the next thing is that Leah is actually going to walk us through some of the updates from the Office of Sustainability, so we can kind of hear some of the progress over the last bit of time, and then we'll hear directly from our councilman talking about some exciting new initiatives. So I'll stop talking and turn it over to Leah.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, and just as context, I thought it might be helpful to hear the updates on the heels of looking back on our priorities before we get into some of the newer items, but I'll be very quick. General updates. So with regards to some of those items, the benchmarking ordinance was going to be debuted last March. It got put on hold with COVID, and we do hope, I've been in communication with Councilwoman Anthony, and we would like, and the mayor, and both are in support of this moving forward. Just based on calendars and holidays, it looks like that will probably happen in January. We're hoping for that second meeting. I believe the first meeting's on the 7th, and the second one is that third week. I think that's the one that we're hoping to have it introduced. I know that they're both interested in doing some sort of press event the week before when it is the agenda is posted, so we have some context on what that policy is all about and why we're doing it. And just as a refresher, this is an ordinance that would require large buildings in the city, both public and private, to report their energy use to the city at an annual basis. And the city, my office, would make that information available to the public. And it does a couple of things. I won't give the full briefing, but kind of the important things is just by requiring building owners to track and report their energy use, it certainly adds a focus, and it opens up opportunity for investments in energy efficiency. And of course, buildings are our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the city. So if we're not tracking, if we're not managing those emissions, it's unlikely that we'll meet our carbon neutral by 2050 goal. Let me just toggle back here to the memo. So with that, I also think we could explore introducing the other ordinance that updates the roles of my office. I don't think that needs any change. And that really is aimed at institutionalizing our work, our focus on equity, and particularly with the targets and goals set out in the climate justice plan, making that a part of our work. The other important piece it does is make some shifts to the role of the ESTF and institutionalizing the fact that 2 seats should be filled by either REJC members or other members appointed by an environmental justice org, just to make sure we have continued representation and participation on this group from environmental justice communities. And the third important piece that it does is it institutionalizes my office's role in the capital improvement plan and making sure that as we invest hundreds of millions of dollars in our city buildings and infrastructure, that we're making sure that that is going to help us move towards our sustainability goals. So there's certainly opportunity for that to be introduced along with the benchmarking ordinance as well. Community choice aggregation, I don't have an update from since last time we discussed some of the hurdles with the low-income rate payer support. So we're still working on that. Green justice zones, I'll pass over that. I'll give Vadek an opportunity to provide an update if he chooses to towards the end. But a few other updates. Generally, the city received a Lead by Example award from the Office of Energy Resources last week for our new EV charging stations that were installed earlier this spring. And we're also in the process of procuring somewhere between 10 and 15 new electric vehicles for the city's fleet. And those will replace some of the older, dirtier, least efficient vehicles in our fleet. And it's based off of a fleet study that was done, I think it was completed in the beginning of 2020, that looked at our entire fleet. It was funded by and supported by National Grid and some of the resources they have to help electrify transportation. So excited to see that moving forward. And I will turn it over to Emily Koo to give a quick update on plastic bag enforcement, pesticide-free PVD, and the metrics and data work that she's been leading.
Yeah, that was a lot. I don't think there are too many updates on what we previously shared on the plastic bag ban. We continue to lead with education, acknowledging that we will be proceeding with enforcement as soon as 2021 to ensure consistency with plastic ban that's been in place. Just acknowledging that when we do proceed with enforcement, the first official violation will still be a warning. And we're, I think that's, Leah, that was all we're gonna get on the plastic bag ban. On the metrics and data front, in August, our intern Ellie gave an overview of the data summary and all the targets and metrics that have been written in the Sustainable Providence Plan and the Climate Justice Plan. And a small subcommittee of this task force has been meeting to align and prioritize a lot of those targets and metrics, which will be really helpful in tracking the work that our office does and the work that we kind of track publicly on the dashboard. So really, like, every initiative that we discuss as a task force and that we're working on as an office should have a target and then a metric that we're working on towards that target. And that will also inform how our office reports to the task force annually. So earlier this year, I presented the 2019 kind of report, and that was technically was the highest priority actions from the Sustainable Providence Plan, with edits and additions that had been added with various climate goals that had been set by the city. So we're trying to kind of revamp and align using the Climate Justice Plan at the start. And related to data, I think I was also going to just mention some of the reporting standards the city has been reporting to. So we recently got a score back from the American Council on Energy Efficient Economy, ACEEE. We ranked 23 out of 100, and which was pretty good for a city for our size, and continue to get exemplary recognition for our equity work. And Leah and Monica from the RJC were actually invited to speak on that equity work in clean energy planning. Another aspect of that reporting structure, we got a lot of really, we improved a lot because we're working on CCA. If we pass the energy disclosure ordinance, that would also really improve where we're doing compared to other cities. And we also continue to contribute to the Carbon Disclosure Project's city's open data portal, which allows us to be assessed and being compliant with the Global Covenant of the Mayors. And then the third thing Leah mentioned was pesticide free. We have finalized the report on Providence parks and environmentally preferable practices in Providence parks. And we are intending to roll out both that report and the more residential pesticide-free campaign in the spring of 2021.
Thanks, Emily.
I should add.
Anything else? Great. I just wanted to emphasize, if anyone wants to take a look at the ACEEE results, it does provide a really good framework to thinking about what areas we have for improvement. And as Emily mentioned, the benchmarking policy will really help us be sort of competitive and with a lot of other cities. So really important work there. Thank you, Emily. Dadik, did you want to give an update on green justice zones? No pressure.
Yeah, I'll do a quick little update. I parked or whatever. Hi, everybody. So Green Justice Zone's been going great. We've had our first two community and stakeholder meeting. So basically with that project, I know there are people on YouTube watching this that may not have heard of Green Justice Zones, but we have through our work with the Climate Justice Plan, have identified different areas that are environmental justice locations in the city. And that's the south side of Providence, mainly the port area of Washington Park, and as well as Olneyville, which I'm actually sitting in right now. And these spaces, we're going to be working with community members who are residents to work alongside with government regulators from the Office of Sustainability, as well as the Planning Department and Department of Energy, of DEM and Environmental Management and DOH. There's a lot of alphabet. There's an alphabet soup. We're in it, doing that work with folks. And part of the process is to get folks education, get them up to speed on where the processes are in the systems and how things can be changed, as well as doing visioning of what a green justice zone in those locations really mean. So we've been doing those meetings. We had a good, really good opportunity to come together with folks, and we went over the Just Providence framework, which this body has accepted and was brought in front of this body. And we did a dance party using those definitions and use some artistic practice to really start visioning what would be a future success of the group and how we're doing the work. So really excited about how the work is moving. We have another community cohort and regulators coming up for the final part of the year in December. And I'm comfortable like updating folks. And if people have any questions, they can reach out to me, Emily, or Leah, and check out.
Thanks, Vadik. A quick question I have, and then we do have a presentation, so I want to make sure we get there. But a question I have related to the ordinance that you mentioned, the benchmarking ordinance, reminds me where last time you updated us on the hiring of the energy manager. And I know there's still the other position as well. Can you just, if it's appropriate, can you?
Yeah. So we have two positions that are currently vacant. One is the energy manager, which we are well into the hiring process and hope to have someone on board in January. We had great pool of candidates, and it's being dragged out a bit, the process, because it's really been challenging to make some of these big decisions. But really pleased with that. On the Climate Justice Policy Associate, we're actually going to be using some of the grant funding that is like basically salary savings from having that position open, and working with a facilitator who's really rooted in equity and collaborative governance to help us think about that position and how we actually really leverage that position to be a shared resource between my office and the Racial and Environmental Justice Committee. So trying to like apply the principles of collaborative governance to a position, right? An actual resource. So we're really excited about that. There's some bureaucracy that we have to get through to bring that person on board and get the funds dispersed, because that grant does sit in the city coffers. But yeah, so it's going to be a while. I would expect that's, we're going to take our time with it. We really want to get a good process and a good sort of understanding of how we're going to, establish a work plan and management of that position. And so it is truly a shared resource between my office and the REJC and really just frontline communities of Providence in general.
Great. That's awesome. Thanks, Leah. And congrats on bringing on the new person in January.
Fingers crossed. Thanks.
And congrats to Dino for finally actually retiring.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm sure he's not here, but he's retired.
I don't want to jinx it.
He well deserves to part ways. He's been a great just team member and hanging on with us through this past. It's been a year almost since he retired that he's been supporting. So we're really grateful to have him and really excited to release him.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited that we are joined by our newest council person, so thank you for joining us, and has the presentation. And before I share it, I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with what Sean said earlier, that if I share a presentation, I'll send it to him right afterward.
Sure.
Okay. Is that okay, Sean? I can't tell if you're saying something.
But yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, great. So I will share my screen, and with gratitude for you joining us today. So please take it away.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I want to thank you all for the amazing and important work that you're doing around environmental initiatives in our city. And I've been really grateful to have been a part of some of these priorities laid out by Leah's group and this group. And, you know, we have a Herculean task ahead of us. And obviously, we can't wait as it relates to saving our planet and addressing the climate crisis. So I'm really excited to be a part of some of those initiatives. And whether it's the benchmarking ordinance or establishing the city as an anti-racist institution or community choice aggregation, there's certainly a lot to do, and it's been a massive undertaking. So I want to thank you all for that, and I certainly look forward to working on some of those initiatives, but also addressing some of the low-hanging fruit. And that's something that I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. As we know, issues around zoning and the environment are very complicated and they're quite weighty. So considering there's so many goals laid out in the climate justice plan, again, we're trying to sort of figure out what low-hanging fruit is out there and how we can further support the plans set forth by the climate justice plan. So I'm going to start off, if we can move to the next slide, I'll just kind of give you a brief sort of lineup of some of the presentation items. So I'll share a little bit about my background for those of you who don't know me, my passion for the environment and why this work is important to me as an individual and as a member of the greater community. And then I will switch gears to a resolution that I'm looking forward to proposing on the council. And there's also an ordinance that goes along with that, but I'm just going to share the resolution today. And then there's a couple of other initiatives that I want to let you know about. And of course, I certainly want to gather feedback and questions from this group and get a sense of next steps moving forward. So a bit about me, I'm a 25 plus year resident. I think it's yep, we're on the right slide. Of Providence. I grew up in the Fox Point neighborhood. I went to Providence Public Schools. I'm a Brown alum where I went to undergrad and grad school. I'm an educator in Providence, and I'm also a Unity and Diversity Coordinator where I oversee an entire school division on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I lived in Minneapolis for several years, and I was also an educator there, but also the chair of the Minnesota Senate District 60 Committee, an administrative director, served as a strategy director for a local city councilman, and worked on legislative policy for that person, and was also a policy aide and an advisor for the current mayor of Minneapolis. As it relates to the environment and how deeply I care about the environment, I have signed the Green New Deal pledge, meaning I intend to use my position as a council person to truly champion a Green New Deal at the municipal level as much as humanly possible, and fight against environmental racism and prioritize the health of families in our communities over fossil fuel industry profits. And I'm also one of the co-founders of the Providence Coalition of Neighborhood Associations. It was a coalition of 19 neighborhood associations across the city that have worked collaboratively around citywide issues. And a key example of one issue that we were able to coalesce around is putting together a statement around the transfer station at our port. So we essentially brought together 33 neighborhood associations, environmental partners, and elected officials to take a stance on reducing the burden of asthma and improving health outcomes for those in the Washington Park community and those around the Port of Providence, especially our frontline communities, and especially children and adults in those lower income urban neighborhoods along the Port of Providence. As I mentioned, I've signed the Green New Deal pledge, and I think fighting for climate change and environmental justice is critically important, and I would say one of the most important issues, and I hope you all agree, is addressing climate change. And so I look forward to certainly working with you all to ensure that our future generations have a livable and sustainable planet. I think we can move on to the next slide, which is single-use plastics in city buildings. So on Earth Day 2016, as we all know, the mayor signed an executive order that set a goal for becoming a carbon neutral city by 2050. You all have read through the climate justice plan and some of the policy recommendations as it relates to making Providence a more equitable, low carbon and climate resilient city. And what I'm doing here is really trying to add on to that and sort of supplement that and think about the low hanging fruit and take additional steps to reduce the single-use plastic pollution in the environment and specifically in our city. And I have a copy of the resolution that we've been working closely with our policy office on, and I would certainly welcome your feedback and love to share that with you all so that way we can refine it, make changes to it, and certainly introduce it to the council as a body. But essentially what this resolution does is it acknowledges the fact that plastic plays an important role in our economy, but plastic packaging accounts for a lot of waste in our city and across the world. And plastic waste, if not managed effectively by cities, can certainly add on to the pollution of our environment and thus disproportionately affect frontline communities of color, in addition to other things like clogging storm drains or entering rivers or oceans or natural landscapes and landfills. And it's incumbent on us to address that in our city. So the reason why this is important, and this is the next slide here, more than 300 cities in 55 countries across the world have banned single-use plastics. And it's also an extension of the plastic bag ban, which we have seen implemented across our city, and other states such as New York, California, Hawaii are among states to have banned single-use plastic bags statewide, though there is no federal ban. And other municipalities have also worked towards addressing just plastics in general on city property. So Tampa, for example, has worked to reduce styrofoam and other single-use plastics on city properties. The same has been done in South Fulton, and that is something that they've implemented to reduce single-use plastics in city buildings. And that's what this resolution essentially is doing, is it's asking the city for an inventory on some of the single-use plastics that are being used or procured by the city in ways that we can reduce our dependency on single-use plastics. And with the passing of some kind of legislation, Providence can certainly join the global effort to reduce waste, prioritize sustainability, and protect our environment. And it's our hope that through an ordinance that would reduce single-use plastics in city buildings, that would certainly encourage residents to increase recycling and other waste reduction practices, as the city can model that. And it could also motivate perhaps our business community to play a substantial role in making Providence a greener and more eco-friendly community. But I think it's really important that we as a city model that first, as other municipalities have done. And I'm hopeful that the city would be willing to move in that direction. So if you look at this slide here, the resolution essentially requests that the city council requests that the city of Providence do an inventory and provide a list of all single-use plastics, excluding PPE, given COVID, used and procured for city buildings. So this is focused specifically on the procurement process, and I want to make that distinction. It would not include any punitive measures on someone who, let's say, comes into City Hall with a styrofoam cup, or they buy something from Dunkin' Donuts and they bring it into a city building. It's just more so about establishing what is being procured in terms of single-use plastics for city buildings, and how we could eventually move towards the direction of reducing some of those single-use plastics. And then it also requests that the city administration assist the council in enacting a future ordinance for a more sustainable procurement process, which reduces and regulates the use of single-use plastics, specifically on city property. So if we're able to essentially model that, hopefully other businesses and organizations will follow suit, and it can also just sort of set a precedent as we think about implementing this potentially in the future citywide. And so the next slide here is I guess the thank you slide. So essentially with this resolution, I'm hoping that I can get your feedback, certainly get your advice, and I look forward to working collaboratively with this group in applying the principles of collaborative governance. And I want to thank Leah and the Environmental Sustainability Task Force for all the important work that you do. And I'm incredibly grateful for your feedback and your thoughts in advance. So I have shared a copy of the resolution. Sue, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with everyone, I would love it if folks just took a quick glance at it, and perhaps we can open it up to a larger discussion where we elicit your feedback and thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation. I have the resolution up on the screen now, and I will also email it to everyone on the task force, as well as you, Sean.
I just wanted to chime in and thank Councilman Goncalves for taking the time and bringing this to the task force. We had spoke a few weeks ago about this being introduced at one of the council meetings, and after we talked about it a little bit, I was really pleased that he agreed to bring this here. And I think what this really demonstrates is a willingness to work with us and kind of model that collaborative governance approach. That I think I've said that word or that phrase 10 times already. Really trying to make sure that what we put our efforts behind are aligning with the priorities that are coming from the community, and that we're not operating in a top-down manner. So this was a really, I think, important step, and I just want to acknowledge our partner on the City Council for being willing to take that step, and not just take this right to the council and move it forward, but really acknowledging that we're trying to establish this process that is really in partnership and in collaboration with community. And so yeah, just wanted to put that out there as some framing. And I also know that Emily has been doing some work on procurement in our office, and so she might be able to chime in at some point, but I want to open it up for comments and discussion first.
And just echoing that as well. And that being said, please pick this apart, because that's ultimately going to result in the best possible legislation. And that's what I'm interested in, is people being really critical of this, so that way we have something that we can put forth that's that we're all proud of and is truly reflective of what the goals of this group are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for that background as well, Leah. That's really helpful. And in the spirit of input and collaboration, I'd love to open it up first to task force members, and then we can also call on members of the public too who have any questions or comments. I'm going to stop the screen share so everybody can see each other's faces more easily. But I'll make sure that document gets sent out to, along with the councilman's contact information. So does anyone on the task force have any questions or comments to start off?
Just a comment. Thank you for the presentation. Your point about establishing a model that other businesses could use to follow suit and organizations. I think that's like really important, just to show that the city's gonna lead by example and really have something that's sort of like shelf ready for businesses to implement. So thank you. I think that's great. I look forward to reading the rest of it.
Thank you so much for that, Priscilla.
Others? No, I see Carlos shaking his head, so I think that's a no.
I'll just say thank you so much.
Other than to congratulate on that, both the presentation and the resolution, I think is just like so important and needed and well executed, from what I've seen. So congratulations, thank you.
Amelia, were you jumping in? Oh, sorry, Councilman.
Oh, I was just thanking Carlos for his remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Councilman Goncalves, and for sharing that and doing the work and giving us the background on like your history and everything. And I'm just like, how old are you? I'm just like, you're doing all like, you're like 25 years here. I'm in Minnesota. It's like, whoa. I was impressed. And also I want to say, like, you don't have to answer how old you are. It was a joke. And so, but I do have a question about like how, like, so this is resolution and then there's an ordinance around procurement. How are you seeing the ordinance? Like, is it like that the city is going to be intentional about not procuring single-use plastic items? And how does that live, and what does that process look like to really think about that question?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And that's something that we're certainly working through. We're doing a lot of due diligence on that. So we're working closely with our policy office on that. Obviously, city attorneys and the solicitors for their feedback. But essentially, this would look pretty similar to what the plastic bag ban looks like throughout the city. But this would just extend to city buildings. So it's almost like a spitting image of the plastic bag ban, but it's about really analyzing single-use plastics that are used and procured in the city, and then coming up with a plan to essentially do away with those or reduce them as much as humanly possible. And one of the things that we've been really intentional about, so this would be something that's a little different. If you are, let's say, in violation of let's say the plastic bag ban, there is an offense for that. And so we certainly wouldn't want to have a punitive mechanism against employees, municipal employees. So I think I alluded to this earlier, where if someone brings in, let's say, a plastic cup, or they go to Dunkin' Donuts before work, that wouldn't be a part of this. So there's no punitive enforcement as it relates to bringing plastics into city buildings, but it's again about analyzing what we are procuring and being really intentional about how we can minimize our reliance on some of those single-use plastics.
Share, this is great, and it's really aligned with the work that the city's been doing in partnership with Healthy Babies, Bright Futures, which focuses on reducing chemicals. And so the report we've done on Providence parks not using chemicals, and the campaign we've been talking about discouraging residents and institutions from using pesticides, there's also a piece of that project that is working on environmentally preferable purchasing that focuses around like reducing chemicals in our furniture and our office supplies, but would certainly apply to single-use items. And so the way that VADIC like framed it was very helpful in that not procuring single-use plastic items would certainly contribute to like reducing chemicals and having environmentally preferable purchasing. And the way we've been approaching it with the purchasing department is with the help of WB Mason right now, since that's how we purchase a lot of our office supplies, doing that inventory as you described of like, it's hard to get all the data from them and to compile all the data, but we started with paper and we looked at in 2018 or 2019, this is how much paper we purchased, here's how much it would cost plus or minus to switch to 40% recyclable paper. And so I think that process that we're going about by category is like, we could easily also like look at the research of like reasons that we should be eliminating single-use plastics within city buildings, and then seeing what we purchased in the past and how much it would cost us to find an alternative.
Absolutely.
I also, I guess, so that's one piece of it. Another overlap is we have worked with art, culture, tourism in the past on kind of a green screen as well for events, and have piloted various options of how to reduce waste at PVD Fest and other events.
Mm-hmm.
And have like worked with vendors on group purchasing compostable and recyclable supplies and things like that.
Can I ask a quick question? And then Catherine and I think Amelia may have had a question. I guess I have two. One is there a future hope that if this goes well with the city, that then it would lead to like non-city owned buildings? So like regular restaurants and businesses not being able to use products like styrofoam and other single-use plastics? Or are we kind of waiting and seeing what it could turn into if it passed?
So in a perfect world, I would say so, but obviously these things move sort of in steps, and so the city, as Priscilla mentioned, leading by example could hopefully spur some other organizations to follow suit and do the same. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily have purview or jurisdiction to be able to mandate that until we are able to codify that via some type of ordinance. But this is a start.
Awesome. Catherine?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Thank you, Councilman Goncalves. I actually am totally in your ward, so voted for you, and so happy to. Your presentation was great. Thank you so much. I'm curious about if there is a timeline under which this would all go. Like, would we want the city to have this look at their purchasing done under a certain amount of time? And maybe Emily has some ideas about working with the paper procurement, if there is some idea about like if we could say that we wanted it done by the end of 2021, or if there is some date in mind.
Not at the moment, and I think that's something that we certainly want to flesh out. But similar to the plastic bag ban, there was a lot of education and outreach, and also essentially letting folks know how it would be enforced. And so a similar model, I think, would take shape with that, and I think Leah could probably answer this better than I could. About how long did that take? I know the ordinance took effect 6 months after passage, but from your experience, Leah, how long did that take the Office of Sustainability to do sort of the education and outreach around enforcement?
Well, it's a big part of Emily Ku's job still. We're not at the compliance rate that we would like to be, and I would say our window is closing in terms of being able to effectively do education and outreach without a punitive mechanism. We're getting a lot of pushback, both from businesses who are in compliance and from those who aren't in compliance about enforcement. Ones who are in compliance are frustrated by the fact that the city's not actively issuing violations because, they have taken steps to make the switch, and their, neighboring store has not, and they want the city to do something about that to create a fair playing ground. But on the other hand, other businesses, many businesses are, of course, really struggling right now. So we're trying to really balance all that. I would say it is a big part of our work, and it does take a lot of time.
And the good news is this would only be extended to city properties. So that's a huge difference, right? The enforcement would essentially be all in-house, but certainly gathering the data of what we are procuring, how much we are relying on single-use plastics can inform some of the policy moving forward. So that data, I think, is going to be critical to the next steps in how this ordinance is ultimately crafted.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted to loop back and just the plastic bag enforcement. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and with furloughs, it has been felt really important to do those in-person education visits before we proceed to enforcement, which is increasingly impossible. Like since it really is just me trying to do those, I pondered kind of asking the task force for support as well to do more informational drop-offs, but with the pandemic surging, didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I think that there is a huge need to do more outreach to retailers to ensure that they're aware of the plastic bag ban. I'm going to shift to phone outreach, and to have support from local leaders and counselors that are willing to make sure that folks in their ward. I think that would have a huge. I think compliance-wise, the big hitters and the big companies are in compliance, and that's already made a huge impact on our waste diversion. But just making sure that the smaller retailers are aware and aren't going to have that punitive impact is important, and has a pretty big impact on reducing plastics citywide. Absolutely.
And the good news about this particular initiative is, again, it would be all in-house. So if it were to move forward, obviously the Office of Sustainability could convey this information to all the other city departments or divisions that are involved in the procurement process, and hopefully once we have data that's pretty robust on what some of the departments are doing around their procurement process and what they are procuring as it relates to single-use plastics, we can certainly use those metrics and data points to think about next steps. And so the fact that this would be all in-house, I think would be a huge help.
A question I have, which is, I guess, less a question, more a comment, thinking back up to the first slide around the creation of the coalition of the community, the neighborhood associations. Emily, I wonder if in future days when the pandemic is less surging, if that's a group the ESTF could partner with also on the outreach to help you with those face-to-face visits, since they're in all the neighborhoods, there's both the ESTF, but then maybe that's a nice partnership of, sustainability across the city.
Yeah, I did email, I believe Liza, the new contact for the coalition, with the latest on the plastic bag ban and helping to get that out. And I know that I think in this capacity, attended the previous coalition meeting as well to share like sustainability updates. I think that would be a welcome partnership.
Are there any questions from the public? And members of the public have never really been shy about having questions. And how you do that is you raise your hand, and it's under like in participants. Yeah, you're finding it. I see you guys finding it. Excellent. So I'll call on you, and as I call on you, we can unmute you just for your comment. And the comment is related to this presentation, not general comment time. It looks like the first person with their hand raised is Katie. Sean, am I able to allow her to talk since I'm a co-host? So you don't have to do that?
You are.
Okay, I'll just, unless you want to do it. I don't want to like mess up okay.
That's fine.
Katie, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello?
Hello.
You guys hear me? Hi. Councilman, I really appreciate this proposal, and just more of a comment than a question. I'm a member of Zero Waste Providence, and which is community group. We worked on the plastic bag ban bill, and did a lot of outreach about that. And we've been thinking recently about working on some other single-use plastic legislation. So I think we would be really happy to collaborate on this if you're interested.
Thank you so much for that. Am I allowed to drop my email in the chat?
Don?
I don't think we have chat enabled, but I could allow if that, I think that presentation.
Oh, the presentation had it. Let me share the presentation again.
Yeah.
I think I wrote it down. The forward.
Here, let me bring it back up. Here it comes. Can you see that?
info@johnforward1.com. Great.
And Katie, before you go on mute, can you say your full name for the public record?
Sure. My name is Katie Murphy, and I'm here representing Zero Waste Providence.
Thank you. Leah, were you about to say something?
Yeah, this is something that I talked to the councilman about previously, and I just want to flag, my understanding is that this would apply to the city buildings and not school buildings. And I just want to point out that Emily is doing a lot of work on our environmentally preferable procurement practices, and I think there is a lot of progress we can make there. And I do think it's important that we lead by example. I am just, with this not applying, we don't have, the city buildings don't have cafeterias, we don't serve food, we don't have a lot of single-use plastic in our procurement. And of course, with the resolution, we would dig into that and really be able to provide the numbers to represent what our procurement practices are. And I think, that could be useful, but to my knowledge, it's very, very small. If at all. And and I know on the school side that Sodexo, the food service provider, is doing some work to reduce the use of plastic. And I know that is that's a significant contribution to our waste stream, and would have a significant impact. So I just wanted to put that out there as folks contribute to the discussion for context.
And can I actually ask a question on that line, and then I'm totally going to get back to public comment, is if it's for city-owned buildings, even though the schools are controlled currently by the state, aren't the buildings still owned by the city? And the contract with Sodexo is with the city, not with the state. The state's contract is actually with a different food service provider.
So the city does own the buildings. And we do have a contract in place with Sodexo, which was in place before the state's involvement. And I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but Councilman, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intent here is this would not affect the school buildings.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a reason for that? There an intention why not to schools?
Well, I think to Leah's point, that work is already being done and that's been worked out contractually. So we want to be really careful about not stepping on any toes and ensuring that we do have a robust process for other city-owned buildings and we're not, superseding or overstepping.
It'd be interesting to see, like, because that contract comes up every 3 years, is my understanding from having worked on that before, and wearing a different hat. It'd be interesting to see if this does pass, if that's something that can be used as part of the contract negotiations in future times, because the schools use so much plastic. There's so much single plastic.
And that is it's a whole nother can of worms, so to speak. But I think, one, the Sodexo contract, they're not contractually obligated to eliminate single-use plastics. They put forth their own plan to do so, and that was part of the evaluation criteria for bids, looking at how they were addressing that issue. But it's not an obligation, and there's lots and lots and lots of facility restrictions, mainly the lack of dishwashers and staff all in the school cafeterias. That is a huge limiting factor and leads to the high use of single-use plastics. Not that, all of that is up for change, hopefully, but just wanted to, again, just contextual background.
Yeah, and a lot of the schools don't even have kitchens, like they're just reheating, or getting delivered from the central facility.
And again, with these kind of measures, it could sort of set a precedent for future negotiations with companies like Sodexo or companies that are contributing to our competitive bid processes. So this is an important step.
Amelia, before we go back to the public, it looks like you've been raising your hand.
Yeah, sorry. And I'm sort of dealing with my kids while I'm kind of back and forth with the video. I had a question about the timeline as well, but I think Catherine had asked it, but it was basically, the question was between the inventory, the finishing of the inventory of plastic items or single-use plastic items, and the drafting of a new resolution to sort of eliminate single-use plastics. Like, I was just wondering if we could add that into this ordinance, that like some kind of time frame of like within 6 months of finishing the inventory, we'll propose an ordinance. So just a thought. And I also want to echo thank you for putting this forward and being a champion for this issue. It's really great. I also wanted to mention, just because we're talking about schools and like other municipal venues for single-use plastics, where I work, Groundwork Rhode Island, we are partnering with the Partnership for Providence Parks we have a grant that's enabling us to purchase reusable metal water bottles for all the rec centers. So it's like 605 water bottles that we'll be distributing this winter for all the meal sites.
Oh,
so
that's great.
Yeah, thank you. And we're very excited about it, but we're I think that thinking about like those opportunities, like low-hanging fruit, going through the rec centers, like maybe smaller pieces that we can break off as we lead up to like help what you were talking about with the schools, which is definitely a bigger can of worms. So just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. And as it relates to your timeline point, similar to the plastic bag ban, this ordinance, and again, we will share this with you all so that you have a chance to give your feedback and provide any refinements. The plastic bag ban there was a section that requested that it be implemented, administered, and enforced by the Director of the Office of Sustainability. And it also, there's a clause that suggests that no more than 60 days after passage, the Director of the Office of Sustainability would develop and submit to the Council for approval and implementation, an enforcement plan. So we'd be looking to do something similar. Obviously, we'd be working very closely with Leah's office because, again, it's a bandwidth issue. There's certainly a lot that the city's already taking on, and so we want to be very mindful of that. But our hope is that there would be some type of timeline that's built into the ordinance.
Awesome. I want to be respectful of time, but I also want to note that we have Kevin Boudris who would like to give public comment. So I'm going to let Kevin hop off. And Kevin, when you do, please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, great. I am Kevin Boudris. I'm a staff attorney with Conservation Law Foundation, focusing on CLF's Zero Waste Project, and I am also a Providence City resident. Although, Councilman, unfortunately, I'm not in your ward. I just wanted to first thank the councilman for working on this resolution. Leading by example on things like single-use plastics is really vitally important. Single-use plastics have so embedded themselves in our lives, and it can be really, really hard for folks to envision how they can go about their day-to-day lives and live the way that they want to live without single-use plastics. And so when cities like Providence step in and, again, lead by example and show that it can be done and that government can function without reliance on single-use plastics, it really makes a big difference. And it kind of brings the solutions and the paths forward to the forefront. I wanted to comment on just a few things that I didn't see in the resolution. Primarily, I just wanted to say a quick word about the connection between climate damage and plastics. More than 99% of the single-use plastics that are moving through our lives are sourced from fossil fuels. So particularly as the city focuses on climate change and climate mitigation, I do think that it bears some importance in recognizing that part of the way to address, part of the need in addressing climate damage is eliminating single-use plastics from our lives. And single-use plastics also have a significant impact on environmental justice communities, particularly the communities in which the fossil fuels that are used to build plastics are refined into plastic resins. And a lot of those facilities are in places like the unfortunately named Cancer Alley in Louisiana. There are communities all across the country that bear significant direct burdens from our addiction to single-use plastics. And so again, Providence stepping in and leading by example here is hugely important to combating that. I had just one question on this, and it's how are single-use plastic items going to be defined in the resolution? And I ask that because, the plastic bag ordinance, for example, has us focused on things like plastic food packaging, plastic bags, styrofoam containers, plastic straws. But there are a lot of other single-use plastics that I imagine are found throughout city buildings. Office supplies come packaged in single-use plastics. There's a lot of plastic webbing around packaging and things like that. So I just wasn't sure how it was going to be defined and what was going to be included in the, in the eventual accounting.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for all of your points here, Kevin. So in the resolution, to your point, it does reference, I think, single-use plastic bags, plastic straws, polystyrene food containers, cups. But that's something that is certainly going to be informed by what we receive in that inventory. So I think there is an official definition of single-use plastics, but certainly expanding upon that definition, being very explicit and specific about what those items are based on the information that we get from the inventory will be critical. As you know, a resolution isn't necessarily binding. It's just sort of a proclamation of what we intend to do or what the council will support, hopefully moving forward. But we need to be really intentional as we work through the ordinance to make sure that we are not missing some of these missing certain single-use plastics that are being procured by the city, and then we also keep the definition as broad as possible, so that way we're accounting for perhaps things that we don't include, but that is going to be something that we have to be really, really intentional about. The other piece I would say is, in your point is very, very, very well taken, and I think we can make changes to the resolution, is to make reference to how single-use plastics are connected to our fossil fuel industry and our huge carbon footprint, and the fact that they're still going to be here hundreds of years from now, and they leach into the toxins leach into foods and drinks, and they cause hormone disruptions and cancers. And I mean, there's so many things that we can mention as it relates to why single-use plastics are so just toxic for our environment. But I think your point is well taken about including the fact that single-use plastics have a huge impact on our fossil fuel reliance and sort of vice versa, and also reference to the way that it disproportionately impacts our communities of color in the city of Providence.
Can I say something? I appreciate how this conversation is like growing, because like when it first started, I was thinking like this, and then we started talking about like this bigger idea of how like it's causing cancer and disrupting hormones and stuff. And I just want to I know this is a resolution and we don't want to step on toes, but I feel like the biggest thing is the schools and the children, and how do we really, it feels like that group of folks are the most impacted. So just reflecting on my experience with summer lunch program and other things, it all comes wrapped in plastic. Your burger, your snack is all in plastic, and we don't know how long it's been in that. We don't know how warm it got. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But it's so I would ask that as folks are going through this process to push the imagination to figure out the ways to be able to eliminate plastic in all these buildings. And then another thing that I would just push to is not just single-use plastic, but it's like an ink pen, you use it more than once, but they're kind of single-use, you lose one. Yes, exactly. That I'm sure that they're all over the city. So what are the ways that we can work to imagine, I don't know what the alternative would be, what people are writing with. Everybody has to fill their own ink and all that stuff. Like you're getting the water bottles, right? Changing that up. But yeah, I would just like to push us to imagine, that space. Maybe it doesn't happen this year. Maybe it doesn't happen next year, but what is that process and how do we progress towards that?
Yeah, Vadik, I 100% agree with that. And even when we think about the Port of Providence, I mean, the people who are most disproportionately impacted, as we know, are frontline communities of color. But the people who are most impacted, in fact, are our children, right? So Black children and Hispanic children are disproportionately affected by asthma rates along the Port of Providence. And they're most likely to be hospitalized due to asthma. And, 71% of all asthma-related emergency visits in Rhode Island are for children on Medicare. So we need to be really, really intentional moving forward about how these kinds of pieces of legislation address kids who really don't have any control over what's being presented to them. And so that point is just is so well taken. And I think hopefully this is an opportunity for us to also put pressure on companies like Sodexo to change some of their procurement habits to ultimately ensure the safety of our, I would say, arguably our most vulnerable, which are our children.
Thanks for raising that, Batik, and thanks for that response. I'm realizing we have only a few minutes left, and there is some folks from Zero Waste Providence who are going to talk about another, there's another agenda item for them to talk about community composting, and I want to make sure we allow them to do that as well. I'm wondering, I'm going to take the temperature of the room. If folks want to continue this next time and potentially vote to, as the ESTF to support this resolution at our next meeting. There's no vote on our agenda now, so I'm not allowed to take a vote, but I should just always put votes on the on every agenda is what I'm learning. But I'm seeing thumbs ups. Is that something folks want to do, is to have this be our first agenda item next time and discuss having a, okay, I'm seeing thumbs ups. Would that be okay with you, Councilman, for us to vote on this at our next meeting in mid-December to potentially support the resolution?
Sure. Yeah. So, and the other thing I can offer for what it's worth is I'm happy to, given all the feedback that we received, I'm happy to work closely with our policy office to render another draft that we can share out with folks. I would say that if we propose this tomorrow on the council, this is just me, wishing for good luck, and I'm sure I could probably get this done. We could probably get this passed if it were on the next docket. So if I think the next time let's say, so there's a couple things we could do. We could hold off, wait until later to propose this resolution, or we can propose this resolution given some of the feedback. We can send you a draft by tomorrow. Folks can look at it, give us their final approval, and then probably get it passed during the next council meeting, which clerk, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That would be the 3rd, correct?
Sean, are you frozen? Oh, he's checking. You're muted.
I'm sorry. What did you ask?
He asked when the next council meeting was.
It's the 3rd.
Yeah, it is. And that's the last one of the year.
That's
yeah,
the last one
and it's the last one of the year. So again, if we propose this resolution, the next time we met, we could actually show you our draft ordinance, and we can sort of really delve into that, because that's really the meat and potatoes of this all. So if we're able to get that resolution passed, which I'm 100% confident we will, we can certainly delve into, I think, the more weighty sort of meat and potatoes item, which would actually be the ordinance. So but that's totally up to this group. I want to be mindful of not rushing the process.
How do folks feel about that? Having the opportunity to weigh in and write a letter on the ordinance, or a question I might have for Sean, but I think he might be frozen. He's had really bad internet today, it sounds like, is the potential to write a letter and get it approved via email between meetings. I know we've done rushed approvals before, but that's not the same conversation. I see Leah gonna pop in.
So I just want to say one thing. I think it's important that the ESTF has an opportunity to vote on this, and I think that's a really important precedent to set. And I actually think the lapse in meeting is also valuable, because it gives some time to that feedback to get into the process. And the feedback we've heard today, it also gives an opportunity and for folks who might be here sort of representing other organizations or to go back and check in with their base and make sure that this is something that the support is merited for. So I just think that in terms of really trying to hold ourselves accountable to our goals around collaborative governance, and that check is, I know it's frustrating to have to like wait and take the time, but I do think it's really important precedent for the task force to set as it's making decisions around supporting items. And I just uplift that as that accountability to our climate justice plan and the goals around collaborative governance.
Thank you for raising that, Leah. That's really important. Emily, were you about to pop in?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what the work that I'm currently doing on environmentally preferable purchasing could help either demonstrate that we can certainly already do this within our current scope, or like how to just make sure that they're well, I can't think of the right word.
Fair enough. So we will not introduce this for our next docket, but
So don't let me. I want to hear from the task force should make that decision.
Okay. Sorry about that. And again, this is just a resolution. So the ordinance would be the important piece.
Yeah. Static?
Yeah, so I'll say so I'm glad that we did not have a vote today, because I would feel uncomfortable voting without connecting with REJC folks. Like Jesus isn't here and we can't, you know what I'm saying, do our thing. So that would be hard for me. Like on its face, like I've said the things that I felt about it, like it feels like it's a really good, you know what I'm saying, like resolution. You know, I do think that there's a lot of nutrients in looking at our young people and like, you know, pushing that, even though I know it might raise the price of like you paying for food and these different things, like it could change those things. So I know we need to be specific with it, but also it's a resolution. So yeah, I think that I am more in space for waiting if it's, you know what I'm saying, if it's not something that like in the strategies, like I would need to do this so I can do that. Because I think it's important to have momentum and to not like overanalyze things. So if there was an argument around that we haven't heard yet, I would be open to listening to that. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Vadik. And this does sound different than, we did rush our approval or our vote on the community choice because the timeline was so truncated to get it in front of the PUC. And I think that's the difference you're getting at, is like, we were going to miss our window with the PUC if we didn't do that quickly, whereas it doesn't sound like there's a window here beyond the end of the year. So perhaps maybe we unless I see some thumbs downs, maybe we ask respectfully if we can vote on this at our next meeting, and I'll make sure I send around the slides and the draft ordinance, and I'll send out a note to all the ESTF members too to make sure that the next one, definitely Jesus can be there as well. I know he had a class tonight and so it was going to be late. So I'll make sure that it's currently scheduled for Monday the 21st, which seems far away. So maybe I will see if we can do an earlier Monday.
Thank you so much. And what's the best way to share all of this with you all? Should I just share it with you, Sue and Leah, and you can disseminate it to other folks? Or
yeah, if you send it to me, I can send it to the rest of the task force. Okay, great. And if you don't mind, I can also send it. We have a stakeholder list of the people who generally attend the public meetings. I'm happy to send it to them too, but at minimum, the task force.
And I'm in complete agreement. I think taking our time with this to really be thoughtful and intentional is going to serve us well. So I would totally be open to holding on.
Thank you so much. And if you're interested, thank you. If you're interested in staying for our final 5 to 10, 15 minutes, the folks from Zero Waste Providence, if they have hung on, we're going to talk with us about a community composting project that they were interested in, particularly around maybe having it as a potential resolution. So Katie, I think that's you. I'm going to unmute you, and you're welcome to share if that is you. And if it's not you, please let us know who from Zero Waste I should be unmuting.
Hi, everyone. I think Ainsley Brosnan-Smith is going to take the lead on talking about this, but I will also follow up and add on.
Great. Ainsley, I will unmute you. And if you, when I unmute you, if you can introduce yourself for the public record. I always forget to say that, so now I do it before I hit unmute. Ainsley, are you there? Yep, there you are.
Hi, I'm Ainsley Brosnan-Smith, and I was recently hired for Zero Waste Providence as their compost pilot coordinator. And I just want to speak to you about an initiative we've been talking with Leah about, and it's around residential composting. So Zero Waste Providence would like to increase residential composting within Providence in order to reduce the amount of nutrients being buried in the central landfill. There's currently a handful of composting collection services and drop-off locations within Providence, but they're often strapped for resources, limiting their ability to expand collections. We're interested in studying ongoing composting practices and surveying the communities to learn more about why or why not they compost. We are planning to involve residents through educational workshops about backyard composting and how they could compost in their neighborhood via hauling services and drop-off centers. Our study would also like to explore the expenses of Providence's municipal solid waste and how increased composting impacts the amount of tonnage sent to the landfill. We hope the study will summarize the demand for composting in Providence versus the ability of the current hauling services, the environmental and monetary benefits of composting, the next steps for how the city can reach their goals of zero waste by 2033 and carbon neutrality by 2050. We'd like to present this resolution at the next city council meeting so we can establish a presence and introduce our ongoing initiatives for reaching the climate justice goals. But after the discussion we've had today, I don't know if the next city council meeting is doable. So that's just a little about our resolution and how we want to study composting and partner with the Office of Sustainability to do so.
Thank you so much, Ainsley. Does anyone have any questions or comments, either on the task force or Councilman? Leah?
Real quick, just another framing thing, since I was working with Ainsley and Katie on this and helped bring it here. Again, similar kind of situation where I just wanted to encourage Zero Waste Providence to bring this to the ESCF to really try to honor our goals, to make sure, like having a checkpoint with community and public forum to make sure this is aligned with priorities and where we want to spend our time and energy. Obviously, composting is very important. So is single-use plastic reduction, just important kind of procedural moment here.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And I was glad when you introduced Ainsley to me to bring it up here, because I think this is an important thing to have as a public conversation and get input on and have that opportunity. Anybody have any thoughts or input they'd like to provide? Or next steps they might suggest? I know you guys have a draft language that I'd be happy to share around if that's something you'd like to do, if you want to make more of a longer presentation at our next meeting, or if you want me to,
Yeah, we have the draft resolution that we'd love to share around to get impact on. It's no way in final form, but it definitely, it flows in what our ideas are for doing this composting study. So any input would be really valuable.
Great.
This is Katie. Just to add on to what Ainsley was saying, I think the main gist of the resolution is sort of the structure that we're sort of thinking through in terms of collaboration of sort of the different branches here and really getting different parts of the city government involved in this process. And I mean, I think that the whole collaborative aspect is really what we're shooting for here, and that's kind of the reason that we are thinking about this as a study, and that we're not exactly sure what we're going to learn here, and we're not necessarily thinking about enacting a particular type of program right away. We mostly want to look at kind of what is the landscape on the ground in Providence right now in regard to composting, in terms of what's already happening, describing what could be happening very easily and what would be sort of a little bit more difficult or would require more resources to make happen. And so sort of like I think the important thing that we're interested in getting feedback on is the resolution is really about asking City Council to commission this report. And then the report would be would be created by the Department of Sustainability in conversation with partner groups. And one of those partner groups would be Zero Waste Providence. So really kind of trying to ask the City Council to basically request that we produce this is sort of the way we're looking at it.
I just wanted to ask, when is the next council meeting? Like, when does council start back up again? I'm ignorant.
January 7th.
Great.
Oh,
I believe.
Fine.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. I know. It's like last meeting of the year sounds so finite. It's like, well, there's another one 2 weeks later.
We do, on Zero Waste Providence's part, we do have a little bit of a timeline crunch in that Ainsley is only necessarily with us through the end of January. And Ainsley is the one who's going to be taking the lead on producing the report. And of course, there's stuff that she can do right now that's just gathering background information, starting conversations with composters, starting outreach. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff that we would like sort of to have council permission on before we go forward with. So we're just trying to balance all of those things.
And Katie, are you looking for the city to provide funding for the study, or or are you saying that Ainsley has some funding to get started?
Ainsley has funding to get started. We actually, Zero Waste Providence has a sub-grant through Groundwork Rhode Island for the project.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
So Ainsley and Katie, I would love to see it and would welcome you all reaching out to me about it. I think my email was displayed earlier, but if there's some way to get it over to Sue, I'd love to connect.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll send you an email and I'll share it with you and we can set something up to discuss it further. Thank you.
Awesome. Any thoughts or input from anybody else? And Ainsley, if the copy you sent me is the latest version, I'm happy to send that to the task force, and feel free to let me know that you'd prefer not to, but I'm happy to do that after this call.
Okay, I'll email you because it's been updated since then.
Perfect. And that's not me trying to be a gatekeeper. You can't have like everybody on the same email not be CC'd, or it's a violation. I've been told it's a violation of the public meetings rule. That's why I'm like, oh, I'll send it because I can BCC everybody.
No worries. That's
I'm not trying to be like, you have to send it to me. I just want to make sure we're not all on the same.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? It looks like Linda Perry.
Point, I just wanted to be clear, the resolution would ask the Office of Sustainability to do this work and partner with other organizations. So we would certainly welcome help from organizations like Zero Waste Providence and the resources that they bring to the table. But I just, based on Katie's last comment, I wanted to make sure we're clear that, the work would be led by the Office of Sustainability, and we would engage a number of stakeholders in the work in the process.
And Leah, does this build on the work that Nellie DeGogol was doing before she left?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a lot of information about composting in the city on our website, and talked a lot about doing some sort of pilot program. And I know the Zero Waste Providence group has really been wanting to get a sort of commitment from the city to make an investment in a community-wide composting program. Given COVID, financials, just kind of public financial challenges right now, I think, we really need to, I think it would behoove us to focus on the visioning side of this and the planning side of composting. Like, let's imagine what a community-wide composting system in Providence could look like. Why is this important? What are some of the principles and values we want to hold ourselves to in creating such a program? Thinking about making, as an example, do we want to see another truck on the road driving around, like another waste management truck collecting compost that's or food waste that's contaminated with trash, right? That's like our recycling program. We don't want that. I would gander. We probably don't want that. It's a lot of emissions, not a lot of benefit. So let's think about what are the values and principles we want to structure a program around, do community engagement, get input into what that could look like, and then have something to present to council and decision makers in City Hall to help kind of what are the move forward short and long term, or I guess starting with short term steps to move us towards such a program.
And to add on to that, I would say in the coming months, we're going to be knee deep in the budget. So I just want to throw that out to folks as well. I mean, that's a really big ongoing conversation that we're having in the council. So I think that just sort of pushes all of the legislative initiatives just back a little bit.
Thank you for that context. I'm not sure, Vatic, if you're still here, but I'm also wondering if the community composting intersects at all with the green justice zones, in your opinion, or if that's something that's come up in those conversations.
We're not there yet, but it's something that I think is connected. But at this point, with this timeline, I don't think that it's something that's really connected at this exact moment.
Thanks, Vatic.
Another sort of piece of feedback that I think would be useful to us as we're sort of getting started with collecting the background information and starting community outreach is we had initially talked about selecting a particular neighborhood to do outreach in. That doesn't necessarily mean that the background and the gist of our report will have to be centered around one neighborhood. I think we'll very likely be able to produce a report that is sort of relevant to Providence as a whole. But in terms of where we're doing outreach, where we're, whether we're tabling or, calling people or whatever it is we're doing, we just don't have the resources to reach out to the entire city. So we were going back and forth about different neighborhoods, and we had sort of preliminarily selected an area that included Federal Hill and the West End, kind of from Atwells to Broad Street. And that's not necessarily something that we have to stick to, and it's not something that we have sort of decided without welcoming any feedback. Like, we're really interested in hearing what folks think about where we should focus this. And I mean, yeah, that's definitely something. I mean, I hadn't thought about sort of collaborating with the Green Justice Zones, but Ainsley and I were actually messaging earlier when we were listening to you guys talking about the Green Justice Zones earlier tonight, and thinking, maybe that would make sense. I don't think either of the Green Justice Zones is incorporated in the area that we picked already, but that might be something to think about.
Great, thank you. Any other?
Sue, I would also maybe recommend reaching out to members of the coalition. I mean, Linda Perry, Doug Victor, all of those people are very active and involved, and so they're always a good resource.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you. And thinking of Linda and Doug, they both have their hand raised for public comment, and so unless I hear any objections or people who want to jump in, I'll let them do some public comment, and then we can wrap up, realizing that we are a little bit over time. But I'll start with Linda. You have to unmute yourself, Linda, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Linda Perry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Linda Perry from Washington Park Association in the front line here. I want to keep it quick because I know we're like running low on energy here.
Sorry, Linda. No, please.
Okay. Well, in terms of the plastic, John Goncalves and the whole board, my comments, which I filtered down to like 3 little slogans: reduce plastic, replace with an alternative, and encourage creative recycling. We have no recycling, and it's really sad. So we have food mixed in with plastic, mixed in with paper and house goods and all kinds of stuff. It's putting it nicely. So, we had a heart attack keeping the transfer station out of our neighborhood. We don't want to give anybody an excuse to say, see, we really need it. So, creative recycling without creative recycling, we're just running on empty. I think that to encourage a creative recycling project, which we don't have, if people take a field trip to the dump and they see there's food, there's material, there's all kinds of stuff mixed in. So I saw on TV some creative people, they took bottles and they made eyeglass frames out of it. Great alternative for creative recycling. We could do something like that in Providence. We could encourage that. And the idea of the food waste recycling, I think is brilliant and well overdue. I know that there is a facility in Smithfield, a woman-owned compost place. I actually called them like 2 years ago and said, you want to come to Providence? And the Port of Providence has no interest in having something like that there. And if you're going to recycle, there's too much toxin in the air there. You couldn't put it in your garden, if you had good compost. So it has to be in a cleaner environment, in my opinion, and a little bit too close to the sewage treatment plant. However, that's about it. I just want to say thank you, John. Oh, one more question I have. How many council people signed on to the Green New Deal? And I'm going to sign off and give other people time now.
Thank you, Lynn.
You answer that, yeah.
I don't know the answer to the Green New Deal question. I don't know, John, if you know that, but I'm happy to dig in a little bit.
I am not sure. I would say there's a small minority of us if there are more than like 3 of us.
Thanks. And last but certainly not least, Doug, I'm going to take you off, and if you can introduce yourself for public for the public record.
I'm unmuted. My name is Doug Victor. I live on Princeton Avenue in Providence. I just think these efforts are so important. But as somebody who was saying in the 1970s, we need to not have so much plastic. It's really horrifying for me that we're having to have these types of conversations but they're happening. And I want to tell you all that you're on YouTube. You're being streamed on YouTube. You probably know that. And there were 2 people watching. I was one of the 2 before I finally found the link to join the meeting. Anyways, so a couple things. Amelia, your idea of low-hanging fruit is terrific. Vatic, your idea to connect with kids is terrific. How we think creatively about putting these things together, whether there's signage systems that go into our parks, whether there's signage systems that go into school, signs that just encourage kids to think about, not tell them what to do, but to think about, an aspect of the impact. So I think schools are really vital. I think parks are really vital. I know that, I don't know if there are any parks in Providence that have recycle bins. Certainly Peace and Plenty Community Park doesn't, and it would be welcomed. And it would be welcomed with some signage on it that gave some education and some connection to plastic use and climate change, weather variation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I also wonder in terms of zero waste, where they're thinking about doing their initial plan there. There is an 02907 health equity zone that has been put together by Dominic Resendez at West Elmwood Housing. And it might be an option to tie into that group. Now, West Elmwood Housing is involved in creating a composting area in Brownfield in the west end of Providence. So, you know, where are we putting, where are the efforts going? Are the efforts going to some of the more marginalized communities as a means to sort of kind of ameliorate some of the neglect and abuse that's happened over the years? Anyways, those are my thoughts. I don't want to keep you for long. Thank you for listening, and I'm just cheering you all on like you can't believe.
Can I quickly respond to that?
Please do, Katie.
Doug, actually, West Elmwood was one of the first groups that we reached out to. So far, we've reached out to West Elmwood, Federal Hill House, and WBNA. I've worked a lot with West Elmwood on the compost project, and I think that they'll be a great host for that in that neighborhood.
Thanks. Thanks. Just one other thing. In terms of low fruit, one of the things that we've been doing at Peace and Plenty Community Garden, 46 plots. When I started as a garden leader there were probably 50, 60, 80, 90 yard waste bags of organic garden waste that was going to the landfill or wherever it was going to, was having to be trucked using, you know, fossil fuels, using machinery to do that. So I instituted something called Dig It In. And we're now really digging all of our organic waste, something that's called waste, but it's not really waste. It's the plants that have seasoned out and are needing to be removed from the garden for that reason. They're now being dug in. We don't have a real composting system, but the idea of returning the organic waste to the soil where it was taken from helps to build the soil. So that's an initiative that we've done, and I just wanted that for people to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Any other final comments or questions folks have? Otherwise, let folks have their evening. I'm going to say one final thing. Well, one, I really want to thank Councilman Goncalves for joining us and for partnering with us on this. I'm really excited for what's going to come next, and I'll send you guys the follow-up materials from that. So one, thank you so much for your time. I know you have a community meeting right after this, so you don't have a ton of, you know, spare time on your hands. And also to our friends from Zero Waste Providence for joining us to talk about their efforts as well. So thank you. And I also want to highlight that our fearless city clerk, Sean, is going to be a commenter on a panel this Sunday for Common Cause on public meetings. I am signed up to listen in. I encourage you guys all to participate as well. He's led us through all of the varying rules and like helping us figure out how to best do public meetings, not just on our task force, but across the city. So check that out. It's about envisioning better public meetings. So it's on Common Cause's website. You can sign up there to listen in.
That sounds fantastic. I feel like we left the compost discussion a little non-conclusive. Are we going to pick that up next meeting as well? Or I didn't know if people had thoughts on that.
Oh, no, thanks for wrapping that up, Leah. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ainsley or Katie, it sounds like you'll send us you'll send me an updated draft of the resolution that you're working on. I can send it to the task force and we can revisit that at our next conversation about how best to support that effort.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Great. Well, with all else, I hope you guys all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and please stay safe. And if I could please have a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Anyone, everyone in favor, raise your hand. Nope, that in favor. Anyone opposed? Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your evening and looking